Friday, April 20th. Ooh, the last Friday of April. Sorry, the last day of April with you guys. And then we get to our last month. Regular class, we're going to get into our final discussion about the Outsiders test coming up on Monday, 45-ish questions. And then we'll get into the connective short stories. Smiley faces was our tie game for the week. If you do the crossword, it is on my website, and you can just find examples or find them on there if you want to do it, and you can use it on the test if you get done. We, with you guys, got through the death of Dally, correct?
Yeah.
In either classes, we didn't quite get that far. I'm going to make sure. Once again, you guys. So we got to him being dead. Stop looking. Just go past him being
Wait, Dally died?
dead. Alright, with that part, once Dally is dead, what does Ponyboy do right after he dies? That's when he passes out, hits the ground. And I went through the whole big long list of things that happened to him in a single week. And that's where basically we ended yesterday. He spends, after that passing out, when he comes back to, the next week or so, or maybe a bit longer in the book, laying in bed sick. But what he's sick with is a couple different things. One, concussion. That concussion that when he got kicked in the head, it has some long-term damage to it. But the other part of it is the fact that basically, he's dealing with depression and sadness. He watched his best friend die right in front of him, and then watched another guy who was kind of a friend get shot right in front of him. And so he's going through almost a form of post-traumatic stress disorder, the PTSD, as all of these bad things have happened to him. His brain is shut down. With that shutting down, eventually Randy comes to talk to him. And when Randy comes to talk to him, they get in a bit of an argument because Ponyboy declares things have happened that did not actually happen, which gets a little bit confusing. What does Ponyboy declare happened?
He's going to kill Bob.
He declares, I'm the one that killed Bob. Because Randy said, hey, sorry about your friend that died, after the whole killing of Bob. He's like, Johnny didn't kill Bob. I killed Bob. Not only does he claim that he killed Bob, but he has another thing he claims that's definitely not true.
He said Johnny's alive.
That Johnny's alive. He says, Johnny's alive, and I killed Bob. Which we're going to come to. Before that, though, Bob. I get that a lot of people keep saying that Bob was bad, and Bob was evil, and the fact that he was being mean to the boys and stuff like that. But Bob, in general, wasn't a horrible person. What Bob had was bad parents, which goes back to this scene, the very first time Randy and Ponyboy, well, sorry, not the first time they met. The first time they met, Randy was drunk and trying to kill him. But the first time that they met, I think it was at the Dairy Queen, where they were sitting and talking. They have a conversation about Bob. And I'm going to read that because it connects to sort of our thinking of who Bob is. So does that say 116 up there?
Yeah.
There it is. All right. This was Randy and Ponyboy talking at the Dairy Queen that very first time before the Rumble and all that. I'm sick of all this, Randy said. Sick and tired. Bob was a good guy. He was the best buddy a guy ever had. I mean, he was a good fighter and tough and everything. But he was a real person, too. You dig? I nodded. He's dead. His mother's had a nervous breakdown. They spoiled him rotten. I mean, most parents would be proud of a kid like that. Good looking, smart, everything. They gave in to him all the time. He kept trying to make someone say no, and they never did. They never did. That was what he wanted. For somebody to tell him no. To have somebody lay down the law, set the limits, give him something solid to stand on. That's what we all want, really. I mean, one time, Randy tried to grin, but I could tell he was close to tears. One time, he came home drunker than anything. He thought, sure, they were going to raise the roof. You know what they did? They thought it was something they had done. They thought it was their fault, that they had failed him and driven him to do it or something. They took all the blame and didn't do anything to him. If his old man had just belted him just once, he might still be alive. I don't even know why I'm telling you this. I couldn't tell anyone else. My friends, they think I was off my rocker or turning soft. Maybe I am. I just know that I'm sick of this whole mess. So it goes back to Bob. Not being awful, it's just that no one ever disciplined Bob. His parents, instead of trying to make him a better person, just sort of let him get away with a whole bunch of stuff. Bob was handsome. He was smart, he was athletic, he had money, he had a car, he was dating the cheerleader, all these great things going for him, and Bob was still unhappy. When I read that part, it reminded me of the poem we did way back towards the beginning of the year.
Oh, I remember that.
About Richard Corey, the guy who had everything going for him, and what does he still do? Shoots himself. Even with everything going for him, he was unhappy. Bob's that same way. Even with everything going for him, he still manages to be unhappy. It's that same thing here. So he's not evil, he's just a kid that doesn't have anyone yelling at him. And that's where we get to that conversation with Randy. With Ponyboy, his life is awful. His best friend died, and everything's falling apart around him. So he tries to find a happy place, at least the best he can find a happy place. And the way he tries to find a happy place is by bringing his best friend back to life. If his best friend's back alive, things are better. But if his best friend's alive, that makes his best friend a murderer. He doesn't want his best friend to be a murderer. But if Johnny didn't kill Bob, there's only one other person there who could have. And the only other person is? So his happy place is imagining that he is a murderer. That's how bad Ponyboy's life is. Imagine that for you to find imaginary happy place is you being a killer. If only I had been a murderer, my life would be better. That's where Ponyboy is. His life has gotten to that point where he tries to convince himself that he's a murderer because that makes his life in a better place. I'm so excited. When he goes to court, why does he think he has to go to court?
For the murder of Bob.
For the murder of Bob. He doesn't have to go to court for the murder of Bob because the socialists came forward and they told everyone, yeah, we did it. We were drunk. It was our poor choice. We were drowning him. It was probably in self-defense in one way or another. And the guy who actually did the killing is dead after saving a bunch of kids. So he is Ponyboy. He has nothing to worry about. But Ponyboy still has to go to court, but it's not about the murder. Why is he going to court?
So they're going to get custody over him.
Goes back to Derry and if Derry is going to be a good parent or not. Because the idea was as long as you don't get in trouble with the police, you all get to stay together. I've imagined being involved in a murder is involved in the police. So they're going to separate the three boys. Yeah. Sure. Let's go for it. Just take a little pass over there. And so they're going to take them to the court to see if they're going to separate the three of them. Which is why he keeps answering the questions weirdly, like, so how are things going along with your brother? My brother's great, but I think I killed that boy. And they're like, no, you didn't. And is he doing a good job? Yeah, he's great. I'm just a horrible person. I killed that boy. And so he keeps answering strangely because he thinks he's there on trial, and they're just trying to figure out if Derry's a good person. Yeah?
Like, why not, like, do they not want the police to know? Because, like, if the police know about them...
They who?
Ponyboy and his brothers, if they know about them, will they separate them, or is it like do the police know that they lost their parents?
The police know they lost their parents. They had to go before the court the first time, which is before the book started, and the judge said, "All right," even because being a 20-year-old, the judge is not normally going to let you take control of two younger people because you're just too young. But the judge says, as long as the three of you can stay out of trouble, then I'll let it happen. But as soon as the police get involved, and that shows you're not doing a good job, and because your hoodlum friends are getting involved, they'll have to separate you. So that's why they don't want to have the police get involved. And then here, the police definitely got involved. They're like, it's not our fault. We were getting hunted down by these evil socias. And the judge ends up agreeing and says, all right, the three of you stay together. I agree. It was definitely the socia's fault that all this happened. Things go well. Ooh. Not looking at page 170, but this makes me think, no right or wrong answer. This is just my question to you. Is Ponyboy a good person?
Yeah.
Now, if you say yes or no, support it. Why can you say he is good, or why can you say he is not good? Is there anything he has done to prove he is a good person, or can you prove that he is not a good person? Beto?
He's a good person because he's like trying to clear other people's name before his. Like he cares about other people. Over
I could dig
himself.
that. Trying to clear other people first. I'd count that as goodish. Yeah?
He's like stuck together with his good friends, like with Johnny especially. He like didn't leave him when he was like dying, I guess. Like he's stuck with his friends.
So sticking with friends?
Yeah.
Alright. Gavin?
He's a good person because he like saved little kids from like a church fire.
I hear that one quite a bit. If he hadn't saved those kids, would he still be good?
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just as a general question, is like, would he have been good anyway, or is it saving the kids that makes him good? Kylie?
He's a good person, but he's kind of getting shaped by his brothers into like a bad person because of bad influences.
by his brothers are shaping him into a bad influence?
And his whole name.
His peer group, I guess.
Yeah.
If you will. All right, so you're saying he is good, but he's being shaped not goodly. The reason I ask that is because once he starts going back to school, there's a scene on page 170 I'm going to read where he has a confrontation with socias who come up to him. And I want to see if that affects your opinion of him with this scene with them. So page 170, he's hanging out at like a grocery store, and then socias pull up. I was sitting on the fender of Steve's car, smoking, drinking a Pepsi, while he and Two-Bit were inside talking to some girls. When a car drove up, 3 socias got out. I just sat there and looked at them and took another swallow of the Pepsi. I wasn't scared. It was the oddest feeling in the world. I didn't feel anything. Scared, mad, anything. Just zero. "Hey, you're the guy that killed Bob Sheldon," one of them said. "He was a friend of ours. We don't like nobody killing our friends, especially greasers." Big deal. I busted the end off my bottle and held on to the neck and tossed away my cigarette. "You get back into your car or you'll get split." They looked kind of surprised and one of them backed up. "I mean it." I hopped off the car. "I've had about all I can take from you guys." I started toward them, holding the bottle the way Tim Shepard holds a switch, out and away from myself in a loose but firm hold. I guess they knew I meant business because they got into their car and drove off. "You really would have used that bottle, wouldn't you?" Two-Bit had been watching from the store doorway. "Steve and me were backing you, but I guess we didn't need to. You'd have really cut them up, huh?" "I guess so," I said with a sigh. I didn't see what Two-Bit was sweating about. Anyone else could have done the same thing, and Two-Bit wouldn't have even thought about it twice. "Pony boy, listen. Don't get tough. You're not like the rest of us. Don't try to be. What was the matter with Two-Bit? I knew as well as he did that you got tough, you don't get hurt. You get smart, and nothing can touch you." So, after the whole thing, he's starting to... Which character is he starting to become like?
Dally.
Like Dally. He's starting to embrace that side about if you... Because Dally didn't care about anybody. If you don't care about people, you can't get hurt. So he's like, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not going to care about people. I'm not going to get hurt. So he went from, as he said, that good kid, to he's now embracing that dark side of him. That not as good as he used to be. But the thing is, and there's a little bit more after that scene, Ponyboy can't get rid of his heart. As it continues with, "You get smart and nothing can touch you." "What in the world are you doing?" Two-Bit's voice broke into my thoughts. I looked up at him. "What?" "I'm picking up the glass." He stared at me for a second, then grinned. "You little son of a gun," he said in a relieved voice. I didn't know what he was talking about, so I just went on picking up the glass from the bottle, put it in the trash can. I mean, I didn't want anyone to get a flat tire. So what's that tell us about him? So he's ready to shank you and kill you, but I mean, getting a flat tire, that's just wrong. And so the fact that he still has that heart, so he's still trying to be good, he's just having a tough time with the whole thing. Which continues, as he gets into this big fight with Soda and Derry about the fact that basically, Ponyboy is dropping out of school. He's like, "I give up. I'm not going to do school anymore. School does nothing. I'm going to get hard. I'm working a gas station. If Soda Pop can drop out, I can drop out too." And Derry goes, "No, you're smart enough to go to college." And he's like, "Nope, not going to do it. Don't care." And they have this big fight throwdown. And basically, it helps Ponyboy realize that you still have a family. Even though these bad things happened, you still have good things in your life. Which goes back to that poem, which was the idea of stay gold. Find the good things while you still have them. Even though you lose some, keep a hold of those good things. And then we get one last message from Johnny, which I think is what ends up saving him at the end. And where's our last message from Johnny? In the book Gone with the Wind, Johnny writes him a letter. And I'm going to take one last look at that bit. Because he gets the book that gets handed to him from the nurse in the hospital and stuff like that. I took a deep breath and opened the book. A slip of paper fell out on the floor, and I picked it up. "Ponyboy, I asked the nurse to give you this book so you could finish it." It was Johnny's handwriting. I went on reading, almost hearing Johnny's quiet voice. "The doctor came in a while ago, but I knew anyway. I keep getting tireder and tireder. Listen, I don't mind dying now. It's worth it. It's worth saving those kids. Their lives are worth more than mine. They have more to live for. Some of their parents came by to thank me, and I know it was worth it. So, Dally, it's worth it. I'm just going to miss you guys. I've been thinking about it, and that poem, that guy that wrote it, he meant you're gold when you're a kid. Like green. When you're a kid, everything's new. It's dawn. It's just, you get used to it, everything that it's day. Like the way you dig sunsets, Pony, that's gold. Keep that way. It's a good way to be. I want you to tell Dally to look at one. They'll probably think you're crazy, but ask for me. I don't think he's ever really seen a sunset. And don't be so bugged about being a greaser. You still have a lot of time to make yourself be what you want. There's still lots of good in the world. Tell Dally. I don't think he knows. Your buddy, Johnny. Essentially saying that even Dally shouldn't be Dally. The fact that tell Dally to find happiness. Here, Ponyboy's trying to be Dally. He's like, don't. Find the happiness and the goodness in the world. The last thing in there is his teacher tells him if you don't want to fail, you're going to have to write an essay to pass the class about something important that changed your life. And he thinks about writing about going to the zoo or hanging out with his parents. And in the end, he changes his mind, which comes down to the very end. Did you figure out what his essay was about?
The book.
Johnny.
The book was the.
The book was his essay. And so I'm going to read that last little bit where he goes through it and he talks about what he decides to write, which is page 179. But he goes, Mr. Syme, this is Ponyboy, that theme, which is just slang for an essay, that theme, how long can it be? Why, it can't be any less than 5 pages. He sounded a little surprised. I'd forgotten it was late at night. Yeah, but can it be longer? Well, certainly, Ponyboy. It can be as long as you want it. Thanks, I said and hung up. I sat down and picked up my pen and thought for a minute, remembering a handsome, dark boy with a reckless grin and a hot temper, a tough, blonde-headed boy with a cigarette in his mouth and a bitter grin on his face, remembering, and this time it didn't hurt, a quiet, defeated-looking 16-year-old whose hair needed cutting badly, who had black eyes with a frightened expression to them. 1 week had taken all 3 of them, and I decided I could tell people, beginning with my English teacher. I wondered for a long time how to start that theme, how to start writing about something that was important to me. And I finally began like this. When I stepped out into the bright sunlight and the darkness of the movie house, I had only 2 things on my mind, Paul Newman and a ride home. Where do we see that line before?
The very
In the
beginning.
beginning.
At that very beginning. That's how chapter 1 opens, which is he ends up writing the entire book as his essay. A
Is this a real
little
story?
longer than 5 pages, but roughly the same idea. With that, we're going to talk about in a moment the fact that this does connect to real life and a true story, which we're going to get to here in a moment. What I'm going to have you do first is we're going to have you put the books back, so I'm going to talk to the end. Now we have that. So go ahead and take your books back over and put them down.
Is this like a real story?
That's what we're going to talk about.
My parents said that we're gonna watch the movie this weekend, so we can review.
I think it's good. It's a good movie. I know. That way the creepers can't get you.
I didn't get the. I'm upset. So I'm waiting.
Yep, come see me later. I think I'm out of them right now. I have to make more copies.
We don't want to.
DJ, keep walking.
But it's fun. That's fun.
Because I chew on a lot of things. I'm not supposed to chew on. So they like it. Are you covering the screen?
Because I don't want you guys on the camera so the creepers can't get you.
That's why you call it doom
The question that pops up quite a bit with it. No, dogs listen. With the story with S.E. Hinton and all that is whether it's a true story, and yes and no. Ponyboy was not actually a Pony Boy, but S.E. Hinton is the author is Suzanne Elaine Hinton, but she did not use her name because she was a. That's fascinating. I'm asking you to sit, please. She didn't use her full name because she didn't think boys would end up reading the book. So she used the initials S.E. Hinton. She based this on her friends. She was friends with 2 groups of kids at her school in Oklahoma. A group of really poor kids, the Greasers, and a group of really rich kids, the Socias. and they kept getting into fights at her school, and it kept escalating, getting worse and worse and worse each time. She kept saying, if you don't stop, eventually one of you is going to die. Well, she's 16 years old at this time, and she's in her English class, and her teacher keeps making her read books that she thinks are absolutely awful. And she keeps telling the teacher, these books you have us reading are absolutely awful. And her teacher says, well, young lady, if you think they're so bad, why don't you write a better one? So she did. And so she sat down when she was 16 and she wrote The Outsiders about her friends. And she decided to take this what-if scenario, or what happens if my friends end up killing each other, and making it into an actual story. And then she wrote herself into the book. Cherry is the author. And so she made herself Cherry in there with these two sets of friends who end up fighting. She eventually got it published, and it did help. Once she put it out there, her friends ended up stopped fighting and saw the whole idea, and it sort of faded out from there. So the book itself is not necessarily completely based on real life, but the idea of this 16-year-old sitting down to write the book about the things that are happening in their life is true. That's what actually happened to her. Along those lines, there is a sequel called That Was Then, This Is Now. And that's what we're going to start on Tuesday of next week. It's kind of different as a sequel, though. It takes place in the same town and has some of the same characters, but does not follow the Greasers and Ponyboy. Ponyboy shows up as a friend of one of the main characters, but the two main characters is a guy by the name of Mark and a guy by the name of Brian. And it follows them throughout it. And then one of them becomes friends with Ponyboy. Randy shows up in the book again, and then they talk about Bob and Johnny, but they can't be characters because they're dead. And then, Tim Shepard, the one who was the other greaser who showed up to the fight, and was the one that Dowie got in a fight with at the movie theater, he shows up as a character in the book, along with his younger brother, Curly. But other than that, it goes a different direction. The Outsiders was more about getting bullied and fitting in. That Was Then, This Is Now is a bit more adult of a book, with the ideas and concepts it gets into. That Was Then, This Is Now is going to be more about the choices you make and how they change your life. Specifically with drugs. And it gets into the idea that you have these two friends who, while they're still young, one of them ends up going down the path of drugs and the other one goes down a different path. And it's not a preachy book. It just follows them and goes down what happens to these two characters. Personally, I like the sequel better than The Outsiders, which for me is a lot, because I really like The Outsiders. The Outsiders, for me, was not the first book to make me cry. It was the next one, was the one I remember with the tears.
Ow.
DJ, have a seat. You're not going anywhere. And other than that,